Well, good morning, folks. As folks are still coming in, we anticipate a full house this morning. So if you're on the end of a row and you wouldn't mind moving in so that people that, I won't say latecomers, but people that come in the next few minutes will have a place to sit, that would be great. And there's some choice seats down in the front here as we get ready for our seminar this morning. So please come on in and have a seat. Like I say, don't be afraid to walk down to the front. And also, if you would move in so that there's room for everybody to sit. I want to say, by way of housekeeping, that we are recording these sessions, so please check your cell phone at this time and make sure that you're on vibrate or turned off for this next hour, if you would. Also want to say in that vein that there are recording forms on the table in the back in the lobby, and you can fill that out. And Mike Malakar will send you the MP3 file with Sunday's presentation and all four the presentations for this week that will be on that. And that's $10, and you can take that over to the administration building. I want to remind you that we have Faith Walk devotionals available on the back table if you weren't here yesterday or haven't been here earlier. I also want to say that this afternoon we have a religious life seminar at 3 o'clock. With Dan Moulton, who will be talking about Jerome, who translated the Bible from Greek into Latin. Dan, if you would stand up so you can, if anybody has a question for Dan, he'll be doing that. And if you've been in Dan's seminars before, you know that he has humor and he talks about the person's biography, makes them come alive, and it's well worth attending. That's this afternoon, and then Wednesday he will be talking about William Tyndale. And then we have in our presence this morning John Fox, who will be doing our seminar on poetry next week, and here he is. Exploring Epiphany. That will be next week on Wednesday and Thursday, and there's a form in the back about that specifically. You need to sign up for that, and there's the information. Here it is. The information is on the back table. So with that, I also want to say one more thing, and that is that Lakeside began as a camp meeting, and tomorrow evening we will have a camp meeting, in a 21st century camp meeting down on the lawn in the tent in front of Hotel Lakeside. We'll have music and preaching and a candle walk then out to the Lakeside dock, and we're looking forward to that, and all are invited to attend. This morning, I'm happy now to present the Reverend Dr. Jim Wallace, teacher, renowned preacher, and justice advocate, the New York Times best-selling author who just came out in April, the False White Gospel, and this is available at the Fine Print bookstore. And then tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, we'll have a book signing over in the Green Gables, which is right around the corner, and Jim will be there to sign your book. The book, America's Original Sin, is also in the Fine Print bookstore, and you can pick that one up as well. Jim was raised in a Midwestern evangelical family. As a teenager, he questioned the racial segregation in his church and community, which led him to the black churches and neighborhoods of inner-city Detroit. He spent his student years involved in the civil rights and anti-war movements at the Michigan State University. He's the founder of Sojourners, and many of us have been reading this magazine for years. But recently, he was promoted, I would say, to professor at Georgetown University, which is a Jesuit school. And it would be interesting to hear how an evangelical Protestant pastor got an appointment at a Jesuit school. And he's been considered one of the 500 most influential people shaping policy in Washington, D.C. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about his wife, Joy Carol Wallace, who is here with him, who has a career in her own right, one of the first women to be ordained in the priesthood of the Church of England. And her ministry with the inner city poor has, it was the basis of the British sitcom, The Vicar of Dibley. And she's going to talk about her story and The Vicar of Dibley on Wednesday morning, so you don't want to miss that as well. In fact, well, I can tell this little story. I had somebody come up to me and say, I'm not going to be here on Wednesday. Is Joy's going to be recorded? They didn't ask about Jim's session, but they want to know about Joy's Vicar of Dibley. So that kind of gives you a flavor of some of the variety of people and interests at Lakeside. Folks, it's so great to have you both here this morning, and I don't want to take more of your time, so would you give a warm Lakeside welcome to Jim Wallace?
Wow, look at all of you. Good morning. Can you hear me okay? Okay, well, as they say at Ohio State, go green. I am very glad to be here. How many of you have heard of the Vicar of Dibley TV show? Look at that. Look at that. Okay. It's on PBS here. It was really the hit comedy show in the UK. And Joy will tell you more about how she got involved, but she became the script consultant, but also kind of chaplain to the cast. So Dawn French, who's a really big deal in the UK, is still a good friend of Joy. So you will enjoy that time. Jesus said, let me just read the text properly. Then Jesus said to the Jews who had believed in him, "If you continue in my word, you are truly my disciples. You will know the truth, and the truth will make you free." You will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. So that's a familiar text to all of you, I'm sure. It was to me. But what I did in this new book, The False White Gospel, I took texts that I knew well, and I wanted to go deeper, delve into them. What would it mean to refresh and reframe these texts for our time, for this very critical time? And so the thing that really struck me in this text is how normally the opposite of truth is lies. So you think of telling truth and all the lies. Now, there's a lot of spin in Washington, exaggeration. A lot of exaggeration from pulpits, you might say, and spin in Washington. But lies are something else. But I realized counting the lies, and if you were counting, the former president had 37,000 during his term, is not enough to understand the passage. The opposite of truth, Jesus is saying, is captivity. Truth and freedom are deeply connected. They depend on each other. And a lot of our people, I would say, and you may know this too, a lot of our people in our churches are really captive to a lot of lies. So truth and captivity are the issues here. So it's not a matter of telling people they're wrong and I'm right. It's a matter of how do we set people free from captivity. Make sense? Do you find that? Just people feeling not bad people. I mean, there are people, power brokers, who are deliberately lying and they know it to gain power. They know it. But they've tied their own agenda, their own career to a movement, to a strong man. But a whole lot of good people that I grew up with believe the lies and they're captive. So, how do we get to the truth? One way is what I call crossing the color line. Crossing the color line. I just finished a study guide, a pastor study guide for the book. It's going to be out soon. And the first whole session is about people telling each other their stories. Right? Our stories are crucial to all of this. So my story begins in Detroit, Midwest boy, Dunning Park Chapel, they were going to have a revival service. Famous revival preacher coming in on a Sunday night. And all the unsaved kids had to sit in the front row. Because the closer you are to the sermon, the more impact it will have on your life. The front row today is empty. Joy had to sit here. So I'm sitting there because I'm an unsaved kid, right? And boy, he was fiery. He was just as fiery as, as predicted. And he pointed at me. I'm sitting where you are. He says, if Jesus came back tonight, your mommy and daddy would be taken to heaven, and you would be left all by yourself. It got my attention. I'm getting up in years. I'm 6. And if that happened, I'd have a 5-year-old sister to support. So I asked my mother, what should I do? And she was wonderful, as she always was. Not about the wrath of God, but the love of God. No, forget all that stuff, she said. God loves you, has a plan for your life. That sounded better, so I signed up. Yeah, at 6, and I had my adult baptism at 8. That's a joke. My second conversion came when I'm now a teenager in Detroit. I'm now listening to my city. I'm hearing the news, reading the papers, having adult conversations. And something very big seemed very wrong, and we weren't talking about it. So I began to ask, how come life seems so different in black Detroit than white Detroit? Or at least that's what I'm picking up. How come? I hear there are people, families, even kids, hungry, poor, hungry, just blocks away from us. I hear there are people who live in very unsafe places, bad places, dangerous places. I hear there are people who have family members in jail. I didn't know any of those things. And I hear there are black churches. How come there are even black Plymouth Brethren churches? We were Plymouth Brethren. I never heard, never visited. How come? I got no answers from my white world except one honest answer. Well, they said, you're too young to ask the question. When you get older, you'll understand. Or they said, I don't know, it's always been that way. We don't know why. The honest answer was, son, if you keep asking these kind of questions, you're going to get in lots of trouble. That proved to be true. And so I tell my students at Georgetown, trust your questions. Trust your questions and follow them to wherever they take you. So my questions, unanswered in my white world, took me to what we called back then the inner city of Detroit. So I just showed up at black churches. Just showed up with my naive white boy questions. And got a lot of patience and a lot of time answers to my questions. Then I took jobs alongside young men in Detroit like me, but they're black, I was white. And just listening to their life stories, so different than mine, in a factory or wherever, changed my life story, just hearing theirs. I'll give you one story. So Butch was my buddy, Detroit Edison, we were janitors together. We bonded over lots of stuff. One is we both loved to move the big heavy desks to show how strong we were. So when they had a big job, Jim, Butch, come on. And then, this is how old I am, when the elevator operators, we had them in those days, were on vacation or sick, Butch and I would take the elevators. You know, you sit on a little seat and push buttons. You all remember those, right? And on my elevator, and you get brakes because your head would spin if you didn't get brakes. So on my break, I'm going to his elevator, riding up and down, talking. His break is coming to mine, right up down top. He had Frantz Fanon in his khaki pants. He was a young black man in Detroit. This is before the riots in '67. And he said, I want to take you home, meet my mom. His father had passed. So we went home one night to have dinner, and I'll never forget what happened with his mother. Butch and I were talking about the police in Detroit. Because the police often, there were incidents that sparked the riot in '67. Always police incidents. We're talking, and here's what Butch's mother said. She said, so I tell my kids, if you ever lost and can't find your way home, and you see a policeman, duck under a stairwell. Hide behind a building. Wait till he passes, and then come home, find your way home on your own. When Butch's mom said that, my mother's words screamed into my head. Her 5 kids. You ever lost? Can't find your way home? Look for a policeman. Policeman's your friend. He'll take you by the hand and bring you home. Butch's mom wasn't a militant political person. Like my mom, she just wanted to take care of her kids. 2 moms, 2 worlds, 2 nations. We were living in different countries, me and Butch. That was an epiphany. And the more I went outside my world, the more epiphanies I had. It helped me understand the truth. To this day, I learn more about the world. My worldview changes most when I go to places I was never supposed to be and meet people I was never supposed to know or talk to, listen to, or become friends with. So what changes us and our knowledge of the truth is proximity. Proximity. To whom are we proximate? Where do we go? Where do we listen to things? So to me, that's crucial to knowing the truth. And to this day, as we sit here today, 80% or even more of white people in America today don't have one family or person of color in their inner circle. So when moms bond about their kids and their hopes and dreams and health and future, bonding is real. I was a Little League coach for 22 seasons. I know it and saw it. But they don't bond white moms with black moms about kids. So we don't know the truth. I love the story about truth when Jesus and Pilate are having an argument about the truth on the day of his crucifixion. Really, they're having a debate about truth. What is truth? What is truth? It's Pilate. And Jesus is winning the debate. That's when Pilate says, oh, what is truth anyway? Saying, you can't find the truth. Strong men always like to do that. There is no truth. You can't find the truth. So we have fake news. We have alternative facts. We have disinformation. And strong men, it's not so much that they lie all the time, but they want to undermine the whole idea of truth. They want you not to believe there really is truth, or you can find it. So just listen to me. I'll tell you the truth. I mean, even though I said this on a video that you can see, I never said it. And they get away, strong men, by just telling their people, don't believe anything, even if you see me saying it, unless I tell you it's true. And that may change from day to day. We've got a truth problem in this country, and we're going to have it for the next several months. And I think that For people of faith, our vocation includes truth-telling. What does truth-telling mean? So, this constant lying is not aimed at making the people believe a lie, but at ensuring that no one believes anything anymore, says Hannah Arendt a long time ago. A people can no longer distinguish between truth and lies. A people that can no longer distinguish between truth and lies cannot distinguish between right and wrong. And such a people, deprived of the power to think and judge, is without knowing and willing it completely subjected, says Hannah Arendt, to the rule of lies. Think about it, the rule of lies. With such a people, you can do whatever you want. She said that a long time ago. It's as contemporary as can possibly be. Now, when I was growing up, probably like some of you, we watched Walter Cronkite. Every night, only a half hour of news a day. Wouldn't that be this lovely? Half hour news day. Huntley, Brinkley, Walter Cronkite. And who was the most trusted man in America? Walter Cronkite. That's the way it is, he would say. And we all watched, whole family watched after dinner. That's the way it is. Now, we might not like the way it was, and there are all kinds of bias. Still, it was a whole white news world, so black people didn't get covered much at all. That's true. But with the events of the day around the country, we pretty much knew them and saw them and thought that's the way it was. We now live in literally parallel universes of facts and information. Walter Cronkite was a town meeting. A town meeting. We all saw the same town meeting. And I begin to feel this when I'd go out to do pastors' conferences in Kansas, Nebraska, and Missouri. And I'd say to the pastors, how did your people deal with this that just happened? They said, well, they don't even know what happened. They hadn't heard that it happened. And if they'd heard it happened, they'd say, where'd you learn that? And you'd say, New York Times. They'd say, well, then it's a lie. We're living in parallel universes. This is my biggest worry, I think, about our democracy, that we have systems that are completely unaccountable to the truth. In fact, algorithms that know what you think and what you feel and what you read, they aim their stuff right at you. So I have so much of this stuff in this chapter on truth-making. It says, lies that demand our loyalty. So this Paul, let me get it here. Paul talks about itching ears. Psychologists refer to the tendency of cherry-picking the information that proves us right and discarding what challenges our presuppositions as confirmation bias. Have you heard of that? Confirmation bias. It's a whole study here I talk about from Duke. But around 65 AD, Apostle Paul wrote a letter to his apprentice Timothy in which he cautioned, for the time will come when people will not put up with sound doctrine. For the time will come when people will, instead, to suit their own desires, they will gather around them a great number of teachers to say what their itching ears want to hear. They will turn their ears away from the truth and turn aside to myths. 2 Timothy 4:3-4. A long time ago, Our itching ears. We have itching ears and algorithms that are anxious to scratch our itches. Right? That's what we're facing right now, all the time. Oh, thank you. That's called a partner in crime. There you go. So, even what I didn't get to talk about enough yesterday, one big lie is white Christian nationalism. The book talks about that. Well, the name spells the problem. The most inclusive, welcoming, diverse message on the planet, most inviting, welcoming message, now has a white preference. Really? Embedded in Christian nationalism. Embedded is all this assumptions of whiteness, and as Samuel Huntington said, a recent scholar, we were made to be a white Anglo culture. Made to be that way, and should stay that way. That's a scholar that's underneath all of this MAGA movement. Mr. Vance said in his opening remarks in Milwaukee, he said, we are wanting to go back to what this nation was, and hopefully will be again soon. I was at Haley Farm, Children's Defense Fund, with a whole bunch of black clergy when that was going on. Now, they weren't listening to Vance, but to hear that kind of talk and to make America great again, black people know what that means. For them, they know what it means. And so does the base to whom he was speaking. Now, that's not just political, that's a lie. And anyone who crosses the color line hears a very different story of what it would mean to make America great again. So how do we deal with truth-telling? And Joy found a quote from Karl Barth on the plane. She showed me this, which I thought also said it. Here he is. Karl Barth, a long time ago. It is simply out of the question that God helps the Germans, or the French, or the English, or the Americans for that matter. God does not even help us Swiss. Well, that's radical. God helps justice and love. God helps the kingdom of heaven that exists across all national boundaries. The foolish mixing of patriotism, war enthusiasm, and Christian faith could one day lead to the bitterest disappointment. We will not join in drinking this intoxicating potion. You want to look steadfastly and unwaveringly here to God, who loves everyone equally, who is above all the nations, from whom we all have similarly departed, and from whose glory they have fallen short. So, this is a theological group, I can tell. Don't just do politics this fall. Partisan, if they just watch MSNBC, it'd be okay. No. Name things theologically. To lift up a nation and a race in white Christian nationalism is an idolatry. Race and nation are idols. Christian nationalism, with all its white underpinnings, is an idolatry. We have to name that as such. We need a debate about faith this fall. In all of our churches, a debate about faith. Particularly in white churches who are captive to the lies I said the black clergy at the Haley farm, Alex Haley, who wrote the book Roots, bought a beautiful farm in Tennessee, and Marion Wright Edelman bought it, and now Children's Defense Fund has this annual Great Preachers Week. All these black, that's where I was during the Republican convention. Boy, was I glad I was there. Because in that place, we talked about what faith means in the middle of all this. So let's name what this means for faith. The idea that this nation was chosen by God, or now its new Savior, and the people who are in the base talk about their Messiah and Savior, that's their language. This must be named as theologically problematic, not just politically. Named theology. So I said to these black preachers, I said, no, you all have your white sister churches, right? You know, swap the choir, swap the preacher once a year. Yeah. Why don't you go to your white sister churches and say, we'd like to have a conversation this fall, a debate if you want, about the teachings of Jesus. What did he say? What did he mean? How does it apply to where we are and even to the values that we vote? Who we're voting for? Like yesterday in the service, what does it mean to have a politics of neighbor love? Not just voting for ourselves, but voting for our neighbor. We want to have that conversation with you in the fall. And they all thought, I said, now the white churches will say, no, we don't want to bring politics into our pulpits. Kind of we do all the time, but we don't want to do that. So I said, okay, say, no. We have a relationship, right? We have coffee, right? You like the fact that you know a black pastor. So we're going to have this conversation in the fall with your church about what Jesus taught. And if you say no, don't expect our choir in February. How do we have a theological conversation this fall? And it's more than just the candidates. Big announcement yesterday, more energy. Some of you probably feel more hope, and that's good. Hope is good. It's not about candidates, it's about theology, idolatry. It's this air coming in here. So a story. Don't think you have to be a big influencer to be a truth teller. Everybody in this room has influence in some places. There are places where you have influence. Take that seriously. I'll tell you a quick story. My executive director at the Center for Faith and Justice, he's a Scottish pastor, Presbyterian, from Scotland, to a church in rural Georgia he was sent. Culture shock. And his wife is in the choir. And so they're having a choir practice on Sunday morning, like every Sunday morning. And they sing and get ready. And then the choir director says a prayer every Sunday morning. She's not political, militant, but she's scared. She's scared on a given Sunday morning. She says, Lord, protect us from those cartels of immigrants who are coming from the south, from Mexico, and they're coming with disease, and they're rapists and criminals, and they got guns, and Lord, and those protect the soldiers. And she says, the pastor's wife, stop. That's not true, and we don't lie in church. I know you're afraid. I can tell you're afraid. And we can discuss those things, but those things aren't true, and we don't lie in church. Now, it wouldn't have worked if I was there. She had authority there, and she talked about the truth. So ask yourselves, where can you do truth-telling this fall? And I mean in the churches. In the churches. This looks like a white crowd to me. Goodness sakes. You have contacts in white churches in Ohio, an important state. The vocation of people of faith is truth-telling. How do we do truth-telling this year? As I said yesterday at this Kairos time. So I want to talk together for a while, not give you some time for that. But let me talk about peacemaking. Jesus said, "Blessed are the peace lovers." Is that right? No. Because we all love peace, right? We all love peace. Oh, no. Blessed are the peacekeepers. No. But do we want to just keep the lid on? Maybe it covers up an unjust status quo, but let's keep the lid on. Let's be civil and nice. Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers. Peacemaking is to throw yourself into conflicts. Peacemakers are conflict resolvers, which means they go into it, right into it, and they try and resolve conflicts. So, what does it mean to, in the most polarized time that we have known for a long time, what does it mean to be peacemakers? So, Cornelius Plantinga, who's Calvinist, that name doesn't come from the black church, as far as I know, says this. He describes the biblical concept of shalom. There's a whole thing here about biblical words for peace in the Hebrew scriptures and in ours. The webbing together of God, humans, and all creation in justice, fulfillment and delight is what the Hebrew prophets call shalom. Isn't that wonderful? The webbing together of all of us. We call it peace, but it means far more than the mere peace of mind or a ceasefire between enemies. In the Bible, shalom means universal flourishing, wholeness, and delight. A rich state of affairs in which natural needs are satisfied and natural gifts are fruitfully employed. State of affairs that inspires joyful wonder as its creator and savior opens doors and welcomes the creatures in whom he delights. Shalom, in other words, is the way things ought to be. The way things ought to be. That's what we're called as the people of God. To be, and it says those who do this in the Beatitudes, I love this. It says, and those who are the peacemakers will be called the children of God. None of the other Beatitudes use that language. Blessed are the meek and the poor. But these folks, peacemakers, will be called the children of God. So again, crossing the color line, we got some real wind up here, is crucial. In 2012, there was a young man Trayvon Martin in Florida. He was getting some Skittles to bring back to his dad to watch some sports. And he was killed. And everyone knew, if they were honest, that if my son Luke, who was the same age at the same time, had done the same thing in Sanford, Florida, that Trayvon Martin did, everyone knew, honestly, that he'd have come home to watch a game with me. No doubt. No doubt. He wouldn't have been stalked and finally shot. Even wearing a hoodie, he'd have been fine. 2 years later, we're in the UK for a family visit. I'm sitting on the couch with my son Jack. And the Guardian tells a story about this young kid in Cleveland named Tamir. Same age as my son Jack. Same age. Shot and killed in a park. I've been to that park in Cleveland. And Jack, had he been there at the same time, doing the same thing, even playing with a toy gun, the white cop would have got out of the car and asked him a question. Son, what's up? What are you doing? He just shot him instead. My son Jack wouldn't have been shot and killed in Cleveland. In fact, everybody was saying Jack was getting big and tall and strong. Jack, you're looking so big and tall and strong, athletic. But if you're big and tall and strong, as a young black man, you're assumed guilty and dangerous. This is just truth. This is just facts. So how do we, as people of faith, tell the truth at a time when people are stuck with the algorithms of itching ears? I'll close this and jump in to talk with you, but John talks about truth more than any other gospel, and light. Truth and light. To tell the truth is to bring the light. Light has come into the world, says John 3:19. But people love darkness rather than light because their deeds were evil. We feel the darkness all around us now. But the opening chapter of John says what I need to hear. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1:5. Truth and light. That's what John talks about. The truth allows us to live in the light. Or as Dr. King says, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Can I get an amen? Amen. Thank you. Thank you. I left a little longer for questions, but that's what I wanted to do. So here's the thing. A question should be a question, not a sermon. Not that any of you need a reminder about that. But let's take, we got about 20 minutes here, so let's take some questions. We got a microphone. We got Oprah back here with a microphone. If you could just stand up if possible and say your name and where you're from.
Hi, sorry. Hi, I'm Donna, and I live on Catawba. My question is, I have a difficult time understanding how, as a society, we have so many people that can't tell truth from lies. And if I pointed out to family members that I love, like, well, you're a Christian. How does this mesh with you? They can't explain it, or they say it's about the agenda. It isn't about the person, and so I just, is society dumber? I mean, why can't we tell truth from lies? So many people, intelligent people.
I've talked to some people here already since I've been here who live in Ohio, which is a very important battleground state, or used to be, as they say. And I said, in your city, do you ever talk to people who are on the other side? And they said, no. No. We all live in our bubbles. Brittany Packnett, wonderful Black Lives Matter activist, I met on the streets of Ferguson. She says, okay, if white people want to join us in our Black Lives Matter demonstrations and deal with rubber bullets and tear gas and not knowing if you're going to live or die, that's okay, you're welcome. You get through it, you can say, I was there. The bigger risk for you, white people, is to talk to your friends and family and your churches, because that's the hard question. And instead of saying, you're wrong and I'm right, if we have some common ground here, what do we mean? What does Jesus mean by this and that and the other? What did he mean? What did he say? I do a lecture for my students in the fall, just before Thanksgiving, to get them ready for Thanksgiving dinner. With the crazy uncle, mom, and dad, I said, now, best not to say, you're wrong, but thanks for paying for my college. Say, Dad, Mom, here's how I'm changing. Here's how I'm thinking. Here's how I'm growing. Most parents want to know what their kids are thinking and how they're growing, even if it unsettles them. How do we, Thomas Merton says, everything is about relationships. It will be this fall. But do not say this fall, I can't talk about something that'll be perceived as politics. I keep it out of the conversation. Not on the table, not in the pulpit. Don't. You can't. You can't keep it out of the conversation. So what do we mean, though? It isn't partisan politics. It's our values, who we are, what we believe, what kind of people do we want to be, and that conversation has to take place at family tables, in churches, in pulpits. I'm asking preachers to preach 6 Sundays on these 6 texts that we're going through. Small groups, to have the conversation, because to not to have the conversation, your question shows how hard the conversation is. I don't have an easy answer for it. But find the common ground, whatever you have, find the common space, tell people how important it is to you, and try to say more about the texts and the faith, more than saying, just you should watch Rachel Maddow. That ain't going to work, right? So, please. Would you just stand up?
I've found it helpful not to engage in arguments that accuse and say you're wrong, but to use I statements, and that's a classic way to say I. And a really helpful phrase is to say, I see it differently, or I don't see it the same way. And that is an invitation to them to allow you to say how you see it.
Yeah. But Brittany Packnett says that's the biggest risk for us white people. Not joining a demonstration, but having those conversations. And we hear things because our friends and family are captive to lies. They're not bad people. They, in fact, do a lot of good things. but they're captive to lies. So how do we help us all get free from our captivity? That it's a pastoral issue and not just a prophetic obligation. Another question. I see a hand way in the back here.
Okay, so I'm not sure if I'm making an assumption, but I think you're speaking to the choir.
Speak up, please.
I think you're speaking to the choir. That may be an assumption. So have you personally gone to a Christian nationalist church and given your message, and how was it received?
Well, first of all, about choirs. Yeah, you may be. The great choir last night, or yesterday morning, choirs got to get out of the choir loft. Choirs got to go to the streets. Choirs can't just stay singing in the church. So part of it about choirs, I want choirs to get mobilized and get out into their communities. But yeah, I've been to I speak at a lot of Christian colleges. These days, they're even more restrictive than they've been. But I would go into a Christian college, and often there'd be 2 rows of Catholic sisters in the front row. I said, "Sisters, why are you here?" And they said, "Well, we're local." I said, "Yeah, but why are you here?" "Well, Jim, this is a very conservative place." I said, "Yeah, that's kind of why I came. We thought somebody should have your back." So I've had nuns as bodyguards for years. But we're actually going to challenge some of the mega church pastors and leaders to public debate this fall. We're going to do that. Kristen Dumais, Robbie Jones, who was just here, Jamar Tisby, a whole lot of folks we're putting together a debate team. And but more important is the conversations you have in your own churches, in your communities. So yeah, I've been to schools now this fall where one student stood up and he said, "Great conversation, great diverse crowd." He said, "I'm a white male." Well, we kind of all saw that, but he said, "I'm a veteran, okay? I'm a Trump supporter. What do you do with me?" I said, "Well, we have a conversation like we're having. Thanks for standing up. Thanks a lot. Now let's have a little conversation. If you're a person of faith, we can talk about that too." And we had a little conversation. And the students all cheered because we were having a conversation. So I know it's hard. It's threatening. It's risky. You feel like you're risking relationships. But it's for the sake of the people you love and care about that you want to help free all of us from our captivity. So it's a tough thing, but that's your altar call for the week, is to go back to the places where you have influence, because you all have influence, to those places and have this conversation. Joy's right. Not just, it's not a battle. It's here's what I'm feeling, I'm thinking, I'm frightened, I'm concerned, I'm worried about this and that. Let's have a conversation. And just the fact that they love you too, and they see how deeply you feel about this because of your faith, that's a conversation that needs to happen. I saw another hand back here.
I believe I heard you mention yesterday something about Sunday turnout. Did I hear you mention that in your message?
Oh, yeah.
And if so, could you please talk a bit more about that?
Turnout.